Welcome students to the second part of presentation for module 3. This includes topics like factors influencing the design of pavements, that is flexible payments and rigid payments, and also the CBR method and IRC guidelines for flexible payments as mentioned in your syllabus. First, let's see what are the components of flexible pavements. There is a soil subgrade, which is the lowest layer you can see from the figure. Then above that you have the subbase layer. Above that you have the base course. Above that you have the surface course. Surface course can also be called as the wearing surface since it directly comes into contact with the wheel load, and there will be some wear and tear due to the wheel load for the surface course. Also from the surface course, the wheel load will be transferred to a greater area to the base course. That is, through the granular material in the surface course, the load is transferred in a truncated cone shape to the layer below it. That is the subbase course. Again, that is a grain to grain transfer takes place. Again, from the base through the base course, there is grain to grain transfer of the wheel load to a greater area when it comes to the subbase course. And from again to subbase course, the wheel load is transferred in the form of a truncated cone to a greater area through grain to grain transfer mechanism to the subgrade. So let's see about the soil subgrade, which is the lowest layer of the pavement. It supports all the other layers, and also it contains soil which is naturally present at the site or borrowed from other sites. The minimum thickness is 500 mm for national and state highways and 300 mm for rural roads. The strength tests for subgrade soil commonly conducted are CBR test, dynamic cone penetrometer test, triaxial compression test or direct shear test, and plate bearing test. Next layer is subbase layer, which is a layer above the subgrade, which has to sustain only lesser compressive stresses than the base course. That is, it comes below the base course. It serves as a drainage layer to drain the water which infiltrates the pavement surface. It is made of crushed stone aggregates. Also, all the pavement layers extend along the full formation width. Formation width is the width of the pavement plus width of the shoulders. So the subgrade, the subbase course, the base course, and the surface course, all the courses, all the pavement layers extend up to the width of formation. Base course transfers wheel load stresses from the surface course to the subbase layer. It is made of good quality coarse aggregates, and the impact value of aggregates must be less than 40%, and abrasion value of aggregates used in the base course must be less than 40%. The surface course has to prevent the entry of surface water into the pavement layers, and also it is a wearing course which suffers from wear and tear due to the traffic above it. And we have thin and thick bituminous layers for surface course. Thin layers, for example, surface dressing, 20 mm thick premixed bituminous carpet with seal coat, or 20 mm thick mixed seal surface for roads with low traffic volume. And we have thicker layers of dense graded bituminous surface course for roads with heavy traffic. The dense graded bituminous courses have high tensile strength. Marshall stability test and mix design is usually used for designing the dense bituminous mixes. The different factors to be considered in the design of flexible pavements are magnitude of wheel loads, subgrade soil, climatic factors, pavement component materials in different layers, drainage and environmental factors. So we can see these factors one by one. The magnitude of wheel loads, the different factors are maximum wheel load, the contact pressure, wheel load configuration, and repetition of loads during the design life of the pavement. And the total width of the carriageway or total width of the road depends on the total traffic volume, and also this decides the number of lanes which should be given on a particular road. Then for a higher wheel load, we need a thicker pavement or thicker flexible pavement. We are talking about the factors to be considered in design of flexible pavements. Contact pressure is obtained by dividing the wheel load divided by the contact area. Contact area is given by A is equal to pi a square, where small a is the radius of the contact area. So we assume that the contact area is circular in nature. And we have the Boussinesq theory, which gives the vertical stress at a depth z from the surface of the flexible pavement. that is vertical stress is given by 1 minus z cube by a square plus z square the whole raised to 3 by 2, where a is the radius of the loaded area or the contact area. Okay, in this figure you can see the wheel load, and under the wheel load you have the contact area, which is assumed to be circular. You have the wheel load transferred to the different layers in the form of a truncated cone. In the graph you can see in the x-axis the vertical stress sigma z, which is the stress experienced at any depth z directly below the wheel load. Depth z is given in the y-axis, and from the graph you can see that there are two wheel loads, light wheel load and heavy wheel load, that is P1 and P2. For the continuous line, here we have capital P1, that is this line represents the load P1, which is a light wheel load, and this line represents the load P2, which is the heavy wheel load. You can see that when load increases from P1 to P2 at any particular depth, there is a slight increase in vertical stress. That is vertical stress. Here if you consider a depth of 1 meter below the pavement surface, as the wheel load increases from P1 to P2, vertical stress increases. Here also vertical stress increases. Here also vertical stress increases. But that increase is less when compared to when the contact pressure is increased. When the contact pressure is increased from small p1 to small p2, you can observe that there is a greater difference in vertical stress that occurs only in the upper layers. Upper layers, there is the depth up to 1 meter or depth up to 2 meter, there is a difference in vertical stress with change in contact pressure. And wheel load influences more at greater depths. That is, if the wheel load increases from P1 to P2, you can see that at greater depths there is a greater vertical stress experienced in the pavement layers. So our conclusion from the graph and the figure is that contact pressure has greater effect in the upper layers. That is, when contact pressure increases, vertical stress increases by a great extent in the upper layers. And wheel load influences the vertical stress distribution. So total thickness of the pavement is decided by the wheel load. This slide shows the wheel load configuration of heavy vehicles. You can see in the first figure a single axle with dual wheels. Usually these type of axles and dual wheel arrangement is seen in heavy commercial vehicles like trucks or buses. And in the figure B you can see tandem axles, that is you can see a dual wheel axle and you can see two axles, that is the dual wheel tandem arrangement. In this slide it shows that the standard axle load value proposed by IRC 37/2001 for the pavement design is 8.16 tons or 8,160 kilograms, and also the equivalent single wheel load is a parameter which is the load which produces the vertical deflection and compressive stress as same as an arrangement of dual wheel load assembly. That is, a dual wheel load assembly produces a vertical deflection and compressive stress, and for design purposes we need a single value of wheel load. That single value of wheel load which represents a dual wheel load assembly is called the equivalent single wheel load or ESWL. In this figure you can see that there is a dual wheel arrangement, that is a two wheels fixed at one end of a axle is shown in the figure. Capital S is the distance between the centers of the two wheels in the dual wheel arrangement. D is the clear space between two wheels. Okay, and you can see that up to a depth of D by 2, the effect of each wheel is exclusive of each other. That is, in this area effect of this wheel or the wheel load is experienced. In this area effect of this wheel load is experienced. Below a depth D by 2, the wheel loads overlap. So up to the depth D by 2, the effect of the wheel loads on the pavement layers are independent of each other, and beyond the depth D by 2, the influence of wheel loads are overlapping. So this area, the overlapping area of the wheel loads, experiences a greater stress. And beyond the depth of 2s, we consider the stress value as 2p or twice the wheel load. Okay, this is the graphical method for determining the value of equivalent single wheel load. What we do is we plot a log graph with equivalent single wheel load or wheel load on the y-axis and depth below the pavement surface z on the x-axis, and we plot the points p d by 2 and 2p 2s. So we join the 2 points and we obtain the curve. So we can, by projecting from this curve, we can obtain the equivalent single wheel load for any thickness of a particular pavement. In this problem, you can see that we have to find out the ESWL for pavement thicknesses of 150, 200 and 250 mm. They have given us the P value, okay, and they have given us the S value, that is a 270 mm, and the D value 110 mm. So we have to take a log graph and we have to plot ES load in the y-axis, thickness or depth of the pavement in the x-axis, and we have to plot the points P D by 2 and 2P 2S. We plotted the points and we have to find out the ESWL for the depths 150, 200 and 250 mm. So locate the points here, project them to the curve and project to the y-axis to obtain the ESWL values. Okay, next comes the effect of wheel load repetitions. Wheel load repetitions means that is the number of times a wheel loads are sustained by the pavement. That is, many vehicles will be moving over the pavement surface during its design life. So what are the effects of these different loading cycles on the pavement surface? So deformation due to a single load will be very small, but repeated application of loads causes plastic and elastic deformations, that is recoverable and irrecoverable deformations. So higher the number of load repetitions, higher will be the thickness of the flexible pavement required. Traffic we have in India is of the mixed type, that is we have different type of vehicles in India. So we have to convert the wheel loads of all these vehicles into a single value, that is called the equivalent wheel load factor. That value is obtained by dividing the given wheel load of any vehicle divided by the standard wheel load, the whole raised to 4. The effect of moving loads are such as the speed of the vehicle increases, the rate of application of stress is more, but the deformation is less. That is, the stress is less due to moving loads. In this problem, you have to find out the equivalent wheel load factor. Earlier, we have seen the equivalent single wheel load, that is when converting the dual wheels to a single wheel. Here we have to convert wheels of different types of vehicles to the same wheel load. So you have the formula P1 by P the whole raised to 4. LCV with rear axle of load 2 tons, HCV with rear axle load of 15.5 tons. So both wheel loads we can divide it by the standard wheel load value of 8.16 tons and take to the power of 4. So you can obtain the VDF or EWLF of LCV and HCV. The design traffic through the pavement is expressed in terms of cumulative number of standard axles per lane per day. So to find out this value, that is a cumulative standard axles, cumulative number of standard axles, we need certain quantities, that is first is N1, N2, N3, which are the number of classes of heavy vehicles. Heavy vehicles or heavy vehicle loads are considered for the design of flexible pavements. And then we have the R1, R2, R3, which are the growth rates of traffic. Then we have the values F1, F2, F3, which are the equivalent wheel load factors. Okay, then we have D, which is the lane distribution factor. So the formula for cumulative number of standard axles is given as 365 into N1 into F1 into D into 1 plus R1 the whole raised to N minus 1 the whole divided by R1. So we have to find out the cumulative number of standard axles for all the vehicle types individually, and we have to sum them to obtain the design cumulative number of standard axle value for all categories of vehicles together, that is heavy vehicles. In this problem, you have to find out the cumulative number of standard axles. So that is the sum of the cumulative number of standard axles for all types of heavy vehicles. In this problem, we have two types of heavy vehicles. This is the first class and this is the second class. So for the finding out the cumulative number of standard axles for the first class, the formula given is 365 into, we have n into f into d. The d value is not specified in the problem, so we are taking it as 1. We are substituting for n for f, which is obtained by p1 by p the whole raised to 4, and 1 plus r value is given in the problem, 6.5%, the whole raised to m plus n, that is construction time plus design life of the pavement, minus 1 the whole divided by r again. We obtain the cumulative number of standard axle value. Same way for the second class of the vehicle, and the design value is obtained by summing up both the cumulative number of standard axles. Okay, subgrade is the next factor to be considered in the design of flexible pavements. So a subgrade with lower stability requires a thicker pavement, because as the thickness of the flexible pavement layers increases, the lesser will be the load transferred to the lower layers. So a subgrade of less strength means we need a thicker pavement above the subgrade. So variations in stability or strength of the subgrade can occur due to the presence of moisture. So, and for the design value of the stability of subgrade, we assume that the subgrade is having the highest possible moisture content, and the lowest stability value corresponding to that will be taken for the design. The climatic factors to be considered for the design of flexible pavements are: first is the variation in moisture content, which can occur due to the surface water from the rains, and also due to groundwater table. Groundwater table may rise and enter into the pavement surface or the subgrade, and also capillary action, water movement can occur in the subgrade soil due to capillary action or through the pavement layers also, and also vapor movement, that is water vapor movement through the layers below the surface. If there is a proper drainage system, we can control the moisture content, and also if the subgrade soil has high plasticity, that will result in swelling and shrinkage. Next comes the frost action, that is water present in the subgrade soil, it freezes to form ice crystals. So this freezing leads to the increase in size of the water particles, and so the pavement surface will be raised and also damaged. So this is called frost heave. And also when this water melts, there will be softening of the roadbed. That means the subgrade strength is reduced. So frost heave, frost melting, and this freeze thaw cycles is collectively called as frost action. Frost action can be decreased by installing proper drainage system, and also by making layers using non-frost susceptible material. Also by creating capillary cutoff, that is preventing movement of water. If there is no water, there is no frost action. And also using stabilized soil mixes. Stabilized soil mixes will not have any stability changes when attacked by water or frost action. We can also use salts like calcium chloride or sodium chloride to lower the freezing temperature. Then the variation in temperature to which the bituminous binders are susceptible. If the temperature is high, means the binder in the pavement layers becomes soft. So we have to use the appropriate type and grade of the binder depending on the pavement temperature or the atmospheric temperature. Next factor to be considered in the design of flexible pavements are the pavement component materials, that is the materials used to make each layer of the flexible pavement, including the subgrade. The subgrade has to support all the layers above, so soil subgrade should have reasonable strength. Then the stress distribution characteristics of the sub-base layers are important, though that depends on the type of aggregates and their shape factors and gradation. And we know that if we use large stones which are not angular, those stones will not have any interlocking. So they can be easily sinking into the soil layers. So they cannot transfer or take any load. But if you have well graded coarse aggregates which are sufficiently angular, there will be interlocking and there will be load dispersion, and compressive stress will be transmitted in the form of a truncated cone to the layers below. Last is the drainage and environmental factors, which are decided by the level of the subgrade with respect to the adjoining land, type of land use in the adjoining land, the height of embankment and foundation details, depth of cutting, and depth of water table. So if the adjoining land or the land next to the pavement is agricultural, there can be water inflow to the pavement surface or the subgrade, and moisture will affect the strength of the pavement layers. Also, the pavement temperature in different seasons, that will influence the type of binder to be used. And also, if there is cross slope present, some cross slopes will be flat, that is they won't allow efficient drainage of surface water. In that case, we have to control the seepage into the pavement layers. Next comes the CBR method for flexible pavement design. The basic principle is that total thickness of the flexible pavement design depends on the CBR value of the subgrade soil and the wheel load. So weak soil means lesser CBR value, means higher thickness of flexible pavement is required. The advantages of the CBR method is that you have a design method based on simple design charts and also a simple CBR test in the laboratory. The limitations are that the CBR test is purely an empirical test. It does not represent any parameters related to soil strength. Also, the punching shear under the CBR test does not represent the stress on the subgrade in the field. Also, the testing moisture content has to be determined very carefully. And also, thickness remains same irrespective of the type of materials used in the pavement layers other than subgrade, because whatever material we use in the pavement layers, the thickness depends on the CBR value of the subgrade. The design charts cannot be used for all regions or countries. It is not a versatile method. For pavement thickness determination using CBR method, we have to conduct a CBR test on the soaked soil sample. That is soil sample which is saturated with water, and we have to find out the corresponding CBR value. Then from the design chart corresponding to the design wheel load or design traffic, a design curve can be chosen. From the chart corresponding to the traffic, we choose a curve corresponding to the CBR value. The curve gives us the total thickness of the flexible pavement. If the subbase course has a superior material when compared to the subgrade, we can find out the thickness of the subbase course also. So the total thickness minus the subbase course thickness can be obtained. Next is the IRC method for flexible pavement design. This method uses the CBR value of the subgrade, the value of initial traffic N, the design life, the growth rate of vehicles, the vehicle damage factor, and the lane distribution factor. For CBR method, we have the design chart here. This chart is for finding out the thickness of the pavement with the cumulative number of standard axles in the range of 1 to 10 million standard axles. You have the different curves for the different CBR values. So corresponding to the design traffic, you can and the CBR value, you can choose a particular curve and you can obtain the total thickness of the pavement. That is, if we have 5 MSA and we have CBR value of 10%, you can project from 5 MSA to the design curve of CBR 10% and you can extend it to the y-axis to obtain the value of the thickness, which comes to around 420 mm. This is the second chart for the CBR method for cumulative number of standard axles in the range of 10 to 150 million standard axles. So for every value of cumulative number of standard axles, you can project it upwards, choose the appropriate curve for the CBR value and project it to the y-axis to obtain the total thickness of the pavement. In this problem, you have to apply the same formula of cumulative number of standard axles and you have to use it in the design chart to obtain the total thickness of the pavement. All the values to be substituted in the formula are given. Also the CBR value is also given. The N value is given, which is given as 300. Then R value is given, F value is given, D value is also given. Okay, again cumulative number of standard axles can be obtained. You have the value as 3 MSA, so you can use the first chart. For 3 MSA and CBR 5%, the total design thickness from the y-axis is 530 mm. This is another problem. same values are given, same expression is used, and the total thickness of the flexible pavement is obtained. So next comes the rigid pavements. You can see the different layers of rigid pavements in the figure. At the top layer you have the PQC or pavement quality concrete slab. Below that you have the DLC subbase, that is the dry lean concrete subbase, and below that you have the GSB or drainage layer, which is the granular subbase or drainage layer. At the bottom you have the subgrade. So the bottom layer soil subgrade is similar to what you have in the flexible pavement, that is, it is natural soil or soil brought from elsewhere. It's the lowest layer supporting all the above layers. The compressive stress transmitted by the rigid pavement to the subgrade is very low compared to the case of the flexible pavements. The strength tests conducted are plate bearing test. Next you have the granular subbase or drainage layer above the subgrade, which serves as an effective drainage layer. Crushed stone aggregates are mainly used in the granular subbase or drainage layer. The benefits of providing a drainage layer are that it increases the service life and the performance, and also it prevents failure of rigid pavements due to phenomena like pumping and blowing, which will be explained in the following presentations. And also the drainage layer protects the subgrade against frost action. Or then above the subbase you have the base course, which comes directly under the pavement slab. So granular base course is used in low volume roads, and in roads with heavy traffic you have the dry lean concrete, that is a DLC, or any other high quality materials. Then above the base course or top layer of the rigid pavement you have the pavement quality concrete or the PQC pavement slab with a flexural strength of approximately 45 kg per centimeter square, and the slab can withstand the flexural stresses due to traffic load and also stresses due to the warping or bending of slabs due to temperature variations. The type of joints in cement concrete pavements are of two types, that is the longitudinal joints along the length of the pavement and transverse joints along the width of the pavement. Transverse joints are of three types: expansion joints, contraction joints, and construction joints. So from this figure you can see that there is a longitudinal joint running in the middle of the pavement, and you can see several joints along the width. Those are expansion joints or contraction. This is a contraction joint, this is a contraction joint, this is an expansion joint. So one expansion joint comes after several contraction joints. So these are the contraction joints, and expansion joints are the transverse joints, and the center one or the joint along the length is called the longitudinal joint. First, let's see about the longitudinal joints and rigid pavements. So longitudinal joints are provided so that shrinkage cracks can be prevented. Usually longitudinal joints are spaced according to the lane width, that is, for every 3.5 meter width there will be a longitudinal joint provided along the length of the concrete pavement. So these joints can prevent the development of shrinkage cracks. Then they can also prevent the warping stresses, and also they can serve as lane demarcation or markings, because we know that the longitudinal joints come along the length of the pavement and after a width of generally 3.5 to 3.7 meters. So joints come, or they can serve as markings between the lanes. And tie bars can be provided across the joints at mid depth of the pavement slab. That is, at half the depth of the slab there will be a tie bar, which is a reinforcement provided. The purpose of providing a reinforcement in the longitudinal joint was that so that the crack won't widen. The same here for contraction joints. We also provide steel reinforcement in case of contraction joints or transverse joints to prevent the crack from widening. These joints are provided at spaces 4 to 5 meters, and they are provided by cutting grooves of width not less than 3 meter on the pavement slab and depth about 25 to 30% of the pavement thickness. Contraction joints are also provided to prevent shrinkage in pavement slabs. So longitudinal joints are provided at spaces equal to lane width, and contraction joints are transverse joints which are provided at spacing equal to around 4 to 5 meters. So for rigid pavements, there is the next type of transverse joint, that is the expansion joint. So in summer, you know that the pavement absorbs the heat and it expands. Okay. So to accommodate this expansion of the slab, we provide expansion joints. So they are provided after fairly long intervals. That is, you have the longitudinal joints after each lane, or 3.7 to 3.5 meters. You have the contraction joints at every 4 to 5 meters. After several contraction joints, we provide one expansion joint. And they are provided at full depth of the slab with 20 mm gap between the slabs. Also, dowel bars are designed and provided in the expansion joints. This you can see in the figure which was shown few slides before. Construction joints are the third type of transverse joints in rigid pavements. The first two types are contraction joints and expansion joints. And construction joints occur where the concreting work is stopped at the end of the day or due to any other reason. Usually what we do is we make the construction joint overlapping with the expansion or a contraction joint. And also dowel bars are also provided along construction joints. You can see this in the figure of the joints which was shown before. So in this slide you can see the factors affecting design and performance of cement concrete pavements. Earlier we have seen the different factors affecting design and performance of flexible pavements. Now we can see the factors affecting the design of rigid pavements. First one is wheel load. That is, there are three locations on the rigid pavement or the cement concrete slab which has to be considered critically for the design. First is the interior, which is the location away from the edges of the slab. Second is the edge load, which is the edge region of the slab. Third is the corner region where the load is applied. So stress will be higher at the corner region when the wheel load is applied. When you apply a wheel load on the pavement slab, there will be the highest stress experienced at the corner of the slab than the edge or interior of the slab. Next factor affecting the design of cement concrete pavements are daily temperature variations at the location of the road. So daily temperature variations can be influenced by the climatic factors, which are topography, altitude and latitude, type of land use, and season of the year. And there can be warping during the daytime. That is, warping means bending. During the daytime, you know that the temperature is high, the pavement absorbs this temperature and the slab expands at the top portion. So the slab bends, and this bending is resisted by the self weight of the slab. So when there is resistance to the expansion of the slab, there will be some stress developed. This is a tensile stress or a flexural stress, and it is termed as warping stress. Also, there can be warping during night, because at night time the slab cools down and the bottom portion expands more when compared to the top portion. In the daytime it is just the opposite. So in this case the corners tend to curl upwards. And also there is a no warping condition when the temperatures at both the top and bottom of the slab becomes equal and there is no bending. So in this figure you can see that no warping condition, that is bottom and top portion of the slab are equally hot or cool, and there is equal expansion on both areas, and there is no warping or bending. So there are no warping stresses, no flexural stresses. So this is that figure, and here you can see the pavement slab and the subgrade. So this is warping down condition, that is a condition seen at the daytime, that is the top portion absorbs more temperature, the top portion of the slab expands more than the bottom portion, so the slab bends or warps and the corner portion curls downwards. So the third figure is the nighttime representation, that is the bottom portion expands more when compared to the top portion of the slab, and the slab warps or bends and the corner curls upwards. Third factor affecting the design of rigid pavements are the seasonal temperature variations on the pavement. That is, seasonal variations also include summer season, which again leads to absorption of heat by the pavement, and there will be expansion, and expansion will lead to resistance between the supporting layer and the slab, and this will induce a certain compressive stress, and tensile stress is developed at the bottom of the slab during contraction in cold season. So during summer season there will be expansion, frictional resistance between the slab and the supporting layer, which leads to compressive stress. In the winter season there will be contraction and there will be tensile stress developed at the bottom of the slab. And also shrinkage can also occur, which will again lead to movement and resistance inducing frictional force. Fourth factor affecting the design and performance of the cement concrete pavements are the type of joints and their spacing. You know that the warping stress in a cement concrete pavement will depend on the length and width of the slab. So when you consider the length of a slab, means you know that contraction joints are provided at every 4 to 5 meters. So the length of the slab will be usually 4 to 5 meters, or it will depend on the positioning of the expansion joint, or it will depend on the positioning of the construction joint. That is, any positioning of the transverse joints influences the length of the slab, and also the width of the slab will be affected by the spacing between the longitudinal joints. That is, you know that the longitudinal joints occur between the lanes, traffic lanes, so that will influence the width of the cement concrete slab. This will in turn influence the warping stresses. That is how the type of joints and their spacing is significant for the design of cement concrete pavements. And also reinforcing dowel bars are provided across the joints to prevent widening of the shrinkage cracks. So this figure shows the development of frictional resistance during the contraction of the slab. You can see that the slab contracts in this direction and frictional resistance is offered in the opposite direction. Last factor affecting the design and performance of cement concrete pavement is the subgrade. So the effective measures for providing drainage and good supporting layers are use of good granular soil in the subgrade with less fines and compacting the subgrade to a higher dry density. Also then we have to provide a permeable drainage layer above the subgrade so that water infiltrating the pavement surface is drained efficiently. Then you have a good base course to prevent good drainage, which is made of dry lean concrete of adequate thickness. The last point is that you can provide a separation layer between the base course and the cement concrete slab to protect the pavement layers from moisture.